Hi everyone, welcome to the Research Studies Town Hall. We'll let everybody get into the room first before starting. If you could just remember to mute your microphones. We'll get started here in about a minute or two. Welcome everybody. We'll get started here in a minute or two. Just a reminder, please mute your microphones. We'll be taking questions through chat, and we have put some time at the end for a Q&A session. So give us a couple minutes and we'll get started here soon. All right, it looks like people are still joining. I'll give it one more minute. Thank you for your patience. Okay, it looks like we're hovering about 35 to 40 people. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Just so you know, this presentation will be recorded and we'll disseminate some flyers and information to everybody that is registered. Feel free to distribute those materials to your team as you see fit. But I just want to welcome everybody to the Research Studies Town Hall. We'll go over a quick agenda here. First of all, Natasha and I will do some quick introductions so you can get to know who we are. We're going to take some polls so we can gauge how much interaction with these resources you've had and how we can help you in the future with disseminating resources and getting you to know where resources are, etc. I'll do an overview of the website. Also, we're really excited to present a new tool in the administrative tool section of the website. So that will be probably where we spend most of our time today. There'll be a little bit of a talk about the newsletter, some tips and updates surrounding that. And then we've left some time at the end for a Q&A. So at any time, if you have questions during this presentation, feel free to just put them up in chat and we'll be able to go over the questions. We will probably have a little bit of buffer room at the end of the meeting. So just to do some quick introductions, my name's Matthew Steinbeis. I am a project manager with Office of Regulatory Compliance. With the help of Natasha, we manage this resource. Natasha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Natasha Palmer, and I'm the Director of Communications for the Office of Regulatory Compliance in University Research. Matt and I have kind of been taking the lead on getting this research studies off the ground. We took lots of time kind of getting community feedback as the ultimate tool so that community members had one resource to find studies that were taking place on our campus, and also that we could have this created in a way that we could streamline efforts when it came to recruitment for studies. So people had one-stop shop to kind of find the information that they were looking for. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move forward as well. So thanks, Matt.
Yeah. First off, we're going to start off with some polls. We really want to hear from you about your engagement with these resources. There they are. So We've got a series of polls, so please help us out by answering these questions to the best of your ability. Some of the questions have the ability to put in multiple answers. So if multiple answers fit what's going on in your career, feel free to put those as well. And Natasha, I'm unable to see the part where it says how many people have answered, so feel free to move on when it looks like most people have answered the questions.
Like give it 5 more seconds and then I will share.
Okay.
So I think there's like 7 or so that have not quite filled it out.
Yeah, if you have a chance to fill out the questions, we really appreciate the feedback.
And I will go ahead and share. Can you see the results?
I cannot see the results. They're there. So it looks like the majority have visited the research studies website. That's great. A little low on the admin tool, which is good as well, because we'll be covering that in today's presentation. And the office hours looks like about 50-50 of being unaware and aware, and a few people have joined office hours, so that's great.
We have another set of questions as well. So we will go ahead and share those as well. So this is about the newsletter. Almost half of you have submitted your responses, so we're just waiting for a few more. Perfect. And I will share the results.
Okay. Looks like a few people did not know about the newsletter. The majority did know about it and have received the newsletter. About a third have submitted studies. It's great. And about 14% have referred others to submit studies as well. So it's a great level of engagement.
And then the last one is kind of specific to recruitment. So can you guys see the question?
Yes, I can.
So again, if more than one of these options you have used for recruitment, feel free to click on more than one. You have the ability to do so. That just kind of, and for other, if those of you that are clicking on other, if you wouldn't mind typing in chat what those other mechanisms are for you to recruit that you've been using for recruitment, that's helpful as well. Thanks. Advertising on your own websites, any other. We're at like, okay, now we're at 82% of response for this one. So clinic visits, support groups, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I will share the results.
All right. So yeah, a high level of people using flyers on campus, email blasts, social media, community events, newsletters, and other. So great. Thank you for your responses. We definitely appreciate that information and use it for future development of resources. So let's move on to the research studies website. So great news that many people have visited the site. I'm just going to do a quick overview. Looks like about a quarter of people haven't visited the site. I want to make sure you know about the ins and outs of it and how it's built before moving on to the admin tool, which is the tool available to you as researchers to customize the site to your liking, IRB approved, of course. So the website is right here. I'm just making sure my admin tool is still up. I might be kicked out in between this presentation, so we'll see in a little bit. The main splash page brings you to this active studies part. So the URL, we'll include it with the documentation that we're sending out to you guys, but it's just researchstudies.cuanschutz.edu. The research studies are mainly put into categories based on A, what's in Encore, and B, if you choose categories yourself when you edit it in the admin tool. If the study is in multiple categories, say it's a cancer study and an optical eye study, it will show up in both of those. So as many of the categories that pertain to your research, make sure that they're fit in there, because people go to specific parts of the website looking for specific topics, and we don't want to miss them there. You can also use this search button for researchers. This is a great way to find your study. It will find your COMERB number, but this is more like a Google search. So if you type in a specific word, it may or may not find your specific study based off the study title, based off the description, etc. So feel free to play around with that. Just know that this search function is a little bit more generalized. What I want to feature or point out while we're here is right now we have about 1,008 studies that are actively enrolling. So currently the studies on the site are studies in Encore and studies that have a status of open to accrual in Encore. Once a study is close to accrual, it will be removed from this portion and it will be moved to the studies not enrolling tab over here. You can also search by location, and this location is great because you can tell how many studies are going on at various hospitals on the Front Range. This banner that moves probably every 5 seconds are the studies being highlighted in the newsletter. This was just updated today. The newsletter came out yesterday. So we'll talk more about the newsletter later, but if you are included in the newsletter, your study will be included in this banner to give it a little extra pop. A lot of this website was developed, as Natasha said, with community partners, and we really wanted to highlight people that are research novices, that they can learn more about research studies. We have a place here to put news. It's been very much COVID related for the last 2 years, information about CU Anschutz. So we really want to engage the community into learning more about research, how research impacts clinical care, the lifespan of research, et cetera. So that's a real important part that we're going to start advertising out in the community about. There's a couple engagement points on the website that I want to highlight as well. So if you just are coming here as a new person to research, the How to Get Started button is a great place to find information about what it means to be a subject in a research study, what you need to know before you participate, etc. But also a great thing is if you find a study that you're really interested in, and I'm just choosing this one at random, you can press on the Let's Get Started button, which you fill out your name, contact information, and some demographic information. And this gets sent by email directly to the PI and whoever is listed as the primary contact in Encore. This is a great way to collect recruitment information as well as demographic information about who's interested in your study. And I'll go over this a little bit more when we cover the admin tool here in a second. So yeah, that's a brief introduction. Feel free to go to this website if you haven't already and play around, share it with friends and family. We're constantly working on increasing traffic to the website, especially with community partners. So going on to what we'd probably call the meat of this meeting is the admin tool. And it sounds like there wasn't a high level of engagement in this part of the website. So the admin tool, again, we'll include this in our emails after the meeting, but here is the URL to get here. It's gonna look a little bit different for you depending on if you've been here before, if you're listed as a primary contact in Encore, et cetera, et cetera. So The studies below, I can see everybody's study because I'm an admin. These customized studies are studies that people have gone in and edited their studies after Encore. If you haven't done anything in Encore before, you'll need to click on here, which is select a study. And if you don't see your study in there, it probably means you're not a primary contact. So you'll need to be added as an editor by the primary contact, or usually by the PI as well. You can do that by clicking on the add editor. You actually have to choose your study. So the primary contact will be able to see the study and add you by clicking add editor. You do have to have a cuanschutz.edu email address to be an editor on these studies. And it's simple as just putting your name and your email address. So I put Matthew Steinbeis and then Matthew.Steinbeis and add. And once that is done, you'll have access to be able to edit the studies. So we'll split this up into two different sections about what I'm presenting. We really want to focus this meeting on the new tool, which is the ability to add a study if you're not in Encore. Previously, this site has been up for about 2 years. The site has been run completely off an Encore feed. And the main things is you have to have developed your study in Encore and maintained it for the functionality to work. We've worked with a bunch of partners on campus and our IT department to be able to develop this relatively quickly, to be able to add new studies. If you're not using Encore, if your study is involved somewhere else. So let's go through that real quick. And again, if you have questions regarding this, feel free to put them up in chat and we'll go over it during the Q&A section. So the important parts of being able to add a new study to the Research Studies website is that it needs to be IRB approved, and it also needs to be currently recruiting. So with COMERB, COMERB has a study advertisement form. You can find that on their forms page. Just type into Google COMERB forms. At the bottom of the page, you'll find that form. We need to be able to see that. The language being used on this website is IRB approved language. So this is a very important step. If you're not using COMERB, some other IRBs such as WERB, outside IRBs, don't necessarily have this form, but they have a way to approve flyers. They have a way to approve IRB language. We just want to make sure it's not the Wild West out there and we're just putting up advertisements that haven't been approved by whatever your IRB of record is. So what you'll do is you'll find your IRB approved advertisement form. I usually have just a blank form in here, but right now I don't think I do. So this is going to be your approval form, and then it opens up the ability to build your study from scratch. So make sure you're reading through all the instructions, that minor deviations from the language is okay, punctuation, grammatical corrections, etc. But wide changes do need IRB approval. An important part of this is including your IRB number. And one thing I'll note right here is, please don't use this functionality if your study is going to be in Encore eventually, because this part will break the study and it causes errors in the background. It's kind of a big deal to fix. So if your study is eventually going to be an Encore, is an Encore right now, and is just not open to accrual, this is not the place to be. You'll need to be working with Encore support to go through the steps to get your study to be open to accrual, and I'll go through that on the other section. So this part is only for studies that aren't planning to be in Encore at all. So this is where your COMERB number is going to be. There are certain fields in here that are required. You'll see them by the star. The study title, I think as a group, we find it a lot better if you use the short title. A lot of research study titles are very long and super sciencey and not great for the wider community. We want to be aiming sixth grade reading level around there to be able to make sure people understand what the study's about at just by the title or by a brief description below. So feel free to use a shortened title as long as it's IRB approved. Primary objectives in here, it is not a required field, but feel free to put in as much information as you have about the primary objective. A great place to find this information is clinicaltrials.gov if your study is up in there. And then it's very important to have a description of the study, really important to have how many visits this is going to be. Is there going to be blood draws? Is there going to be x-rays or anything like that? So the possible subject knows as much about the study as possible, and it kind of saves time on the back end from you explaining before you start working on consent. The categories, like I said in before, there's multiple categories that you can put here. Your selected category here is going to be your primary category, and that's only important because it chooses what the images you'll be able to choose are from. You can put, I believe, up to 6 subcategories, so feel free to put as many subcategories as you want, but selecting a category, say dental, is going to preload some default images for you that are already IRB approved. So you can use this one. You can also choose a different category image. If you didn't like that one, you can choose the toothbrush. If you do have an IRB approved photo, you can put it here, but I want to stress highly, do not put your flyer here. It does not look great. It makes the whole presentation just look a little bit unprofessional, and there's a place for your flyer below. So this is only for category images.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
We have 2 quick questions that it might be good to address right now. Can you state again what role users must have in Encore in order to edit?
Yes, primary contact or PI.
And then is this capturing studies enrolling on campus or anywhere?
They should be enrolling on campus.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a lot of the primary contact is important in Encore because you can be listed as a contact in Encore. There's been a lot of confusion about that with some regulatory specialists. It has to be primary contact in Encore, not just contact. So that's an important point. Thank you for those questions. So when these studies, the automatic feed is sent from Encore studies, the cudoctors.com picture shows up. So in the background, the principal investigator's email is linked to cudoctors.com. So if you use the same email here, the image for your principal investigator will show up automatically. If they don't love their CU Doctors profile image, you can put it up here by the upload new image. Here is the place, since this isn't going to be a feed from Encore, that you put the primary contact email. And this is important because this is where those recruitment emails will be sent. And it will be important because this will be the person that's able to edit it once it's up and running. It's important to put where you're located and some other stuff below. If you do have any REDCap surveys, you can put them here, including REDCap consents. Just make sure you're following the rules for e-consent. And then additional fields that we feel are pretty important. If there is an age range, this is an easy way to weed people out. You can put compensation here, just make sure it's not coercive. And if it's been approved by IRB, it's probably not. Any travel compensation, and then any social media information that you have. If you have a Facebook page, if you have a Twitter, and any additional websites can go here. You can choose whether those recruitment emails get sent to the PI or not. Some PIs love them, some PIs don't. So just make sure if your PI does want to see those recruitment emails to click yes. And then here is where your flyer goes. So by submitting, you're agreeing to all these. And then once it's submitted, the research studies website team will review your submission to make sure that you're following all the rules, that it's IRB approved, that the study is currently recruiting, that your verbiage makes sense, and that it is compliant with the IRB approval. And once it's approved, it will go up on the website. We usually are able to approve these within 24 to 48 hours. Sometimes it takes a little longer, and sometimes it's a little sooner. So it just depends on workloads and stuff like that. So that was a brief overview of the new admin tool. Again, we've got instruction sheets that will help you walk through this. So we're going to be sending those out afterwards. I just wanted to touch on a little bit about if your study is coming from Encore, how do you edit that? So what you would do, I'm just going to choose a study at random. Hopefully it's not your study. I'll choose something from 2002 that's in there. This may or may not be yours. So if you are the primary contact or have been added as an editor, you should be able to see your study here. If you've already edited the study, it won't be in this dropdown. It will be in this customized study area. So just be aware of that. Once you edit the study, it shows up at this bottom place, and you won't see as many as I do since I'm an admin of this. So you find the study, and then you click on customize study. And this is very similar to the add a study part. The only thing is a lot of these fields will be preloaded from Encore. So I just find my IRB approval form and then walk through pretty much the same thing I just did, although the stuff from Encore will already be here. So if you have an approved title that's a little bit better than your main study title, you can change it. You can add descriptions, procedures. If you want a different picture, you can change that. If your PI wants a different picture, you can change that. So everything I went over for adding a new study is comparable to if you already have a study in Encore that's on the site. Just adding a new study, you kind of have to do all the steps from scratch. I hope that makes sense. So moving on, of course, we'll have time for Q&A at the end, but I've gone over the main research page. I've gone over the research studies admin tool. Here's the tip sheets that we're going to send out. One is just like how the page works, very high level. Another is if your study is in Encore, what's the website category, where to find that field in Encore. So I don't remember writing an objective. The objective, you go to the PC console, main details objective. So this is really helpful if you're savvy at Encore at all to be able to find out where this information is coming from. And then a step-by-step infographic of everything I just talked about with the new admin tool, and then adding and changing your study on the site. So I'm going to kick it back to Natasha, and she's going to talk a little bit about the research studies newsletter.
Yeah, thank you. So as Matt mentioned, we started the launch of our research studies newsletter in the fall. Currently, it's going out on the first and third Wednesday of the month, and it's going to faculty and staff at the CU Anschutz campus and the Denver campus as well. There has been requests that folks have access to students and faculty that are down at the Denver campus. So we do have the capability to reach out to those folks as well. Every study that is in the newsletter has to be in the research studies website that Matt kind of went through. And as he also shared on the homepage, if your study is in that issue of the newsletter, it will be in the ticker on the homepage that rotates. So in the newsletter that went out yesterday, I believe there were 11 studies that were featured. So on the homepage, all 11 of those studies will be rotating through. As Matt said, we've gotten feedback and we're constantly working to kind of improve the process and give you guys what you're requesting as far as reach and usability. I know that there have been questions with listservs. Listservs have been around for a long time, but is with best practices in mind, and trying to streamline the amount of emails that everybody gets without a consistent cadence. We really put this newsletter in process so that everything could be centralized, making it easier on the end user. And also we wouldn't have to worry about CAN-SPAN implications by using the listserv. So they are in the process of being phased out, and more information will be coming about that moving forward. But just so you know, with this new newsletter, when it comes to recruitment of clinical trials, we're really trying to use the best practice and streamline the efforts so that information goes out on that. I know that there's been some requests that the frequency maybe be increased. We're looking at that depending on the volume, the amount of requests that are coming through. So that is not off the table at this point. We're definitely here to provide a service that works here for everyone, and we want it to have usability for everyone as well. I'm going to share my screen real quick and go to, I just want to share with you guys, if you go to the research hub, University Research Hub on the main page, and you go to the news and events page here, you can find the research bulletin that's archived and also the research studies that's archived. So all the past issues are here. As I mentioned, it started in the fall of 2021. So all those issues are there, and we're archiving them as they happen as well. Yesterday's newsletter just went out, so we're working on putting that there. The other thing we wanted to just kind of share is when you submit your request on the newsletter, it takes you to a link, and we've had it in various other locations directing people to this form. As Matt mentioned, more consistency there is with the titles and the descriptions and the images, the better it is for the end user too, because then they see the connection between the study and they know that they're on the right page. And keeping in mind that the average user, this was built with the community in mind, and the average community member has a 6th or 7th grade reading level. So we try to make it as palatable for them as possible, so that the titles are user-friendly and the description. So if you have any questions on how this is inputted and how you would like it displayed, or if it's not, this tool isn't quite working for you, let us know. We can make modifications, but it seems to be working pretty well. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys know that all the past issues are archived. So even though you may say, well, my study wasn't an issue 3 weeks ago, it is still on a website, so people can still access that as our homepage gets refreshed with new issues and new studies on the ticker. But again, we really just want to drive folks to your site. So if you look at how this is archived, I'm just picking this one at random. This asthma study, as Matt kind of showed the admin tool of it, this is the front side of it, right? So this is what everyone sees. So the image relates to what you see on the newsletter, and then the end user can click here, and all this information goes directly to the study team. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody understands how that works, and we're here to modify as needed and kind of keep that cadence going. But we have found that with this in process, it seems to be working relatively well. I think there were a few questions in the chat. Matt, I think there was a question on how do we become an editor, and can there be more than one primary contact?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the primary contact, I am not positive. That's more of an encore question. I'm not sure if there can be more than one primary contact, but the primary contact, whoever's listed as primary contact, can add as many editors as they want. So you just have to go into Encore, find out who the primary contact is for the study. They'll be able to access the add an editor in the admin tool. And as long as you have a cuanschutz.edu email address, they can add multiple people. So everybody on your team can be able to edit that study.
And there's a question here about where can they find those tip sheets, and we're going to send it out to all the attendees that are here on this meeting today. So we'll also provide the recording, and also we will have that information available. I think was there another question? If you guys have any questions that have kind of come up or from this presentation, just let us know. No. Oh, do you track any metrics for how many subjects these tools have helped to recruit? So that was the other thing I was going to say is when the newsletter is distributed, it's going to more than 13,000 individuals. So part of the process of sending out this newsletter is that we do have metrics on the back end so we can see who it's sent to, who it's open to. But this is in relation to the subjects that are actually tracked. So with HIPAA information, we do have access to kind of numbers of the study and how many studies are actually getting referred based upon the newsletter too, or just the hits and stuff. Matt, do you want to expand upon that at all?
Yes, and I'm trying to find where my browser went, but I do want to share a pretty cool tool that is available to everyone. Let me see if I'm going to have to log back in, so I apologize because I think my browser crashed. But let me get into the tool real quick and show everyone that we can track the registration in the I'm interested in the study portion of the site. And I'll show that to you here real quick. It's very strange that I can't.
As Matt is looking for that, there's another question that came into the chat about where can we find information about social media regulations, or could you expand on the extent to which we can advertise studies via social media? One of our PIs is interested. So yeah, Megan Lane in the Office of Communications has recently joined and is working on putting together some guidelines about regulations with social media, and working with Jules Middle, who's also in that office, the social media manager in that office as well. So more guidelines are coming specific for research, but at CU Anschutz as a whole, I know that Jules has some guidelines that are readily available too, so those can be shared as well. And I don't know, Megan, if you want to chime in as well.
Yeah, I'll post a link in the chat here just about if you want to create your own social channel for study recruitment specifically. We should have more detail on that within, I'm hoping, the next month or two. So stay tuned, but I'll put my email in the chat as well so that you can contact me if you have questions in the interim.
Great. And going back to the tracking of engagement, I did fail to mention in the research studies admin tool, there is a participant screening. So you are able to see your study and how many people have been engaged using the I'm interested in the study button. And so this has very good data about demographics, if they're with the university or not, gender, race, zip code, etc. So on the home screen, you can go to participant screening and or participant data to find out engagement metrics for you, but we can also track for the entire website. So just wanted to give a shout out to that ability as well.
I think there's another comment in here in the chat, Matt, about coding with less than and greater than signs, for example, with BMI. I think a few people may be experiencing an error when they're inputting that information. So thank you for sharing that. We will circle back with our website developers and see if that's a coding error, if that's a temporary thing, or we will definitely get that addressed and get back to you. Thanks for pointing that out. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And in the meantime, when that coding error comes up, you can go into the admin tool and fix it just by putting in your own letters or symbols, etc. And that will lay over the feed. I'm assuming it is a feed coding error that the feed between Encore and the website just doesn't understand. So yeah, if you do come up with your study having weird formatting or strange coding like that, feel free to adjust it in the admin tool. And once that is submitted and approved, it should fix it.
Thanks for that reminder. Anything else?
Yeah, feel free to stay on if you have any specific questions. We'll be on for the next foreseeable future until 1, unless there's no questions. And if you don't have any questions, feel free to log out as well. And that's how we'll know that we're done with the meeting. Again, we're going to send out the recording and then all these tip sheets. But on this, please feel free to reach out at the researchstudies@cuanschutz.edu email address at any time if you have questions. But if you weren't aware, I hold office hours on most Thursdays, depending on if there's a forum like this or if I just have conflicts. So we'll send out the registration information about how to find those office hours, and I can walk through specifically your needs, whether it be help building your site, issues with the site, issues with the newsletter, etc. So feel free to sign up for office hours. The information on that will be sent in email that we send out, and it's usually on the newsletter too. Every 2 weeks when that newsletter goes out, there's usually a plug for office hours as well. And yeah, if you didn't have any questions, feel free to log out. If you did have any questions, feel free to put them in chat. Thank you.
Enjoy the gift of time, everybody. Thank you.